What's up, YouTubers and plant lovers? It's Justin, and today I wanted to talk to you about the HibisQ plant. Now, I know some of you know that I have a video out on the hibiscus plant and how to care for it properly and everything, but take a look at this beautiful plant that I've got right here in the center. It's got this beautiful orange looking flower. It's done by graft breeding. It's called the HibisQ. They only get to be about 2 feet tall and about 2 feet wide. So they're perfect for walkways and borders, edging, and pots also. I have 3 of them right now. I have this little guy in a pot, and then I have 2 in my flower beds that are edging some out, but they look really pretty. They're great plants to have. And when I've always thought of a hibiscus, I've always thought of a big, large, bushy kind of plant that takes up a lot of space and loves a lot of sunlight and water. That still remains true except for the size of these little plants right here. So if you've got an apartment or a little balcony, or you don't really have a whole lot of space, but you really want that tropical feel, the HibisQ little plants are freaking awesome. They just hit Kentucky, I believe, this year. I used to work at Lowe's, and I found these at Lowe's, but when I worked there, they never had them. So I believe they just came into existence not too long ago, and I know that they are just kind of grafted on top of a hardier rootstock, and they are a little bit smaller, well, considerably smaller than your normal hibiscus tree or your bush or whatever you have. But like I said, they're perfect for containers, so you can keep them inside when it gets cold, and you can take them outside when the sun is out and it feels good. And I wanted to tell you all just, how to plant it and how to take care of it, because like I said, they are tropical plants. They are great plants to have, and if you know some of the basics on these guys, they really are easy plants to keep around and care for. Now, I must tell you, I did a lot of my research at hiddenvalleyhibiscus.com. They are the go-to site for any questions you have on hibiscus care, disease, any kind of plants that you might want for a hibiscus. They have so many. I do a lot of my shopping there. I've bought a lot of plants from them, and they know so much. So they've helped me do a little bit of research for this video to make sure I knew exactly what I was talking about. I've always had hibiscus, but I've recently just gotten into them a little bit more, especially since I started doing this channel, because as you'll know, that is the little logo in the bottom of your screen down there for my plant, just because there are so many different types of hibiscus out there, and they are beautiful plants. And plus, they really give you that tropical feel. Now, jumping straight into it, I wanted to tell you the first thing that we really should talk about with these guys is temperature. Now, hibiscus are normally native to Asia and Hawaii and the Pacific Islands, so they are from a place where it's warm and wet pretty much all year around. They love the tropical feelings, and they are almost similar to us in the sense of temperature. I believe they like it anywhere from about 65 degrees up to about 90, 95. So if you're comfortable, your hibiscus is comfortable. Now, they do not tolerate cold at all. If it gets 32 to 30 degrees, your plant probably will die. But that being said, they can survive brief exposures to freezing cold temperatures or extremely hot temperatures for just a little bit, not too long. And certain factors definitely come into play based on how old the plant is, what kind of container it's in, how much water it's had, and exactly how cold it's going to be and for how long. So if you know that it is going to get really cold, down in like the 40s or 50s, I would probably go ahead and give your plant a little bit more water before the cold sets in, because a well-watered plant won't be as stressed out when the cold hits and will probably make it through a little bit easier. Now, if you know it's going to be freezing cold, I would probably bring the plant inside. But if you've got it out in the garden, I would cover it up to prevent the frost from getting down on it, and give it a little bit of watering before then too, probably around a day before the extreme cold hits. And like I said, if it's going to be around 30 degrees for several hours, your plant probably won't make it. Unless it's been around for a while, it's an older plant, and it's kind of back, maybe somewhere that's protected from the cold, drafty air, because that really makes a difference if something's sitting outside versus if it's sitting outside where it's really windy and getting battered and beaten down by the winds and the air and the breeze and all that, because that will stress your plant out too. Now, as far as temperatures go, like I said, they are comfortable and we are comfortable. So indoors, when it's wintertime out and it's really cold, is where they want to be. Now, they'll need plenty of sunlight, but as we know, in the wintertime, the sunlight has been drastically cut back. So with these guys, I do use some of my LEDs to kind of help them out, especially if it's just one or two plants. And they've got a huge assortment of smaller LEDs online. You can go to Amazon or eBay, and you can get some that are designed to take care of a big banana plant like this, or a bigger hibiscus plant, or even some of the larger cacti that I have. They do really well. They've made some great advancements in the past couple of years. They're cheaper, they're flexible, and they have an assortment of different colors and different wavelengths and all that to really kind of get your plant where it needs to be, whether it's just germinating or whether it's flowering or needs to produce any fruit or anything like that. So like I said, I got on Amazon and looked in for the smaller LEDs, and there's a huge assortment of stuff out there for that. So you may have to kind of adjust a little bit for the sunlight during the wintertime, but when spring hits, I go ahead and set mine outside. And as I said, the hibiscus don't really like to be out if it's going to be below 50 degrees. But like I said, if it's every once in a while and it's going to get down to 40, as long as you water your plant probably within 24 hours of the cold hit, your plant probably will survive. But like I said, if it gets down too cold, it could die, so be very careful of that. Now, it's not to say that when the temperatures get down to about 40 degrees, your plant probably will respond by dropping some developing flowers or a couple of leaves. And that's normal, so don't freak out and think, oh my god, I killed it, but just do not forget it if you know it's going to be freezing cold outside, because if you set it outside and it drops down to the freezing temperatures, you may not have a plant when you come back to get it, or when you do remember it. Now, as I said earlier, they do like temperatures around 65 to up to 95 degrees, but they can go higher than that too, because I know that in Kentucky, sometimes it'll get up to around 100, 105, maybe even 110. It hasn't happened recently, but it does get really hot out. And I know that different places that are a little bit further south than we are, they get excessive heat. Again, water comes into play, and that is a key factor in determining whether or not your hibiscus is going to make it through that extreme heat blast. Now, watering several times a day is not unheard of. 2, maybe even 3 times a day to keep these plants hydrated and healthy, to make sure that they get through the heat blast, really helps them out. I know some people think it's better to do a wet spell and then a dry spell and then a wet spell. With the hibiscus, they like so much water, especially to keep all these turgid, kind of beautifully green leaves and all these flowers on there. They're going to need a lot of water to keep up with that. Now you can see he's got one flower open, and the hibiscus flowers only last for about a day, maybe up to 3 days, so they don't last too long, but they do have a lot of other little flower buds that are getting ready to come to fruition. So I think he flowered yesterday, as you can tell around the edges. It's starting to die back a little bit. So if you know it's going to be hotter out, make sure that you're giving your plant kind of a steady stream, or maybe like a drip tube to help out getting water constantly to the roots. And that's not to say that you don't want to overwater it, because if you do overwater it, your plant will drown and suffocate and die back, and probably just die altogether. But a nice steady stream throughout the day to kind of help it get through the cold or through the heat really does make a difference. So you may hit it in the morning, then in the afternoon, and then even before bedtime, just to make sure that they don't lose a lot of water through evaporation and everything. And now that is to be considered with pots too, because a pot will lose water faster than it would if it was in the ground. So make sure if you do have a pot, you're checking the soil constantly to make sure that it is nice and moist. You don't want the plant to stand in standing water, but you do want to have a nice steady supply of it to help them stay hydrated, just like we need to be also. So when it comes to watering, you just want to think of it as two separate entities or two different cycles. You need water for the growing months within spring and summer, and then you need to think about your watering towards the resting months of fall and winter, because those are two totally different things. Now during the growing season, your plant's going to need a lot more water than it will during the winter time or the resting period. So when it's hot out, as the heat index goes up, the water intake levels need to go up too. Now when you're thinking about watering during the winter time, I'll have to bring my plant in probably somewhere around September or early October, and then I'll have to cut back the watering drastically. Now in cold weather, there is a danger of a fungus disease that can kind of develop down in there. So if you are watering too much, your plant is going to get root rot, and you're going to be overwatering, and you're going to kill your hibiscus plant. Typically with these guys, they'll tell you, because the leaves will start drooping when they need a little bit more water. But don't forget, during the resting phase of the winter months, your plant is going to be a little bit dormant, so it's not going to be growing, and it's not going to need a whole lot of water. So around the winter months, you could probably get away with watering about every 3 to 4 weeks, maybe about once a month. But just kind of pay attention to your plant. It'll tell you, you'll start to see a lot of leaf droppage if you're not watering enough. But like I said, you can probably check down, stick your finger down in the soil, down to the first knuckle or the second, and if you can feel any moisture down there at all, I would hold off a couple days on giving your plant any more water. But if it does feel pretty bone dry, you can probably go ahead and give your plant a little bit of water. But usually in the wintertime, I'll go down to the second knuckle, not your first little bend, but your second one, and see if you can feel any moisture at all. Now there are moisture meters that you can actually stick down in there, but those aren't always 100% accurate. As a gardener or grower, you'll develop your own little tricks to see whatever you know and to tell if your plant needs any more watering. So like I said, just keep those two separate, because you're going to be watering different in the growing months than you are going to be in the dormant months too. Now when it comes to light, these guys like direct sunlight. They need at least 6 hours of direct sunlight a day, especially if you're going to have one that's producing a lot of flowers. Like I said, they only last anywhere from a day to 3 days, but if you want them to constantly put out beautiful show-stopping flowers, they need to have the right amount of light to go with it as well. So it needs to be someplace that it's not going to be obstructed from the sunlight for at least 6 hours, if not more. And your plants will appreciate that. And like I said, if you know it's going to be hot out, up into the hundreds, I would probably place the plant somewhere that it can get protection from the sunlight during the hottest part of the day, because you can kind of burn your plant out and scorch the leaves. And I believe around 95 degrees, growth pretty much ceases, so it won't be adding on any more mass if the temperatures are skyrocketing or up into the hundreds. And like I said, if they are that hot, you need to be watering your plant several times a day also. Now, fertilizers with hibiscus can be a little tricky. All I'm going to say with that is, though, that they need to be fed adequately, especially if you're wanting a lot of flowers. It's going to take a lot of energy and a lot of nutrition to keep these show-stopping beautiful flowers around. Because if they're not getting fed right, that's the first thing to go, is the flowers, and then they'll start dropping leaves off too, so they don't have to make as much nutrition for the leaves or the flowers. They'll just drop right off. And also don't forget, there is a limited amount of nutrition in a pot, and there is almost no nutrition in a pot of cocoa coir, perlite, peat moss, and composted bark. Now, a lot of times when you get your plant from the store, it's in a concoction similar to that. And that's not really to feed your plant. That's mainly just to keep your plant upright and to hold it up straight and give the roots something to grab onto. So when you get your plant, you don't want to keep it in the pot that you have it in for so long. You actually want to kind of take it out and put it in a new pot with adequate drainage and adequate substrate in there too. Now, hibiscus like quick draining soil. They do not like water standing around their roots at all times. So anything that's any kind of substrate that's meant for cacti, succulents, or citrus, they don't hold on to water as often. So something like that is pretty loose and porous and will allow the water to just kind of go freely out. And never keep yours in with a saucer on the end of the pot. Now, if that's the only pot you have and it has a saucer on it, just take care to tip it over and drain the excess water out after about 20 minutes, because that's really all the plant's going to be able to absorb after about 20 minutes of water. And let the rest of it kind of flow out, because you will drown your plant if it's sitting in saturated soil all day. Now, what do hibiscus need? When it comes to nutrition, hibiscus need a lot of potassium. Now, that is the last number on the NPK. So potassium is very important for hibiscus for several different reasons. For one, there's a ferocious need for potassium with hibiscus, and they crave a lot of it because it helps out with a lot of their plant growth and a lot of their metabolism. And it also assists with photosynthesis too. As we know, the photosynthesis is the process of a plant taking light and water and making sugar for the plant to feed on. So a lot of potassium is needed for photosynthesis processes too. Now, with those sugars that the plant is making from photosynthesis, they use those in almost everything, from the flowers to the leaves to the roots. They use a lot of potassium for the photosynthesis and for the sugars. And they'll use it just for on the stems and just every part of the flower or the plant also. And also, potassium draws in a lot of water for the cells. So the potassium will help keep the leaves kind of rigid and turgid and keep that beautiful kind of green color to it, so that they can photosynthesize and get what they need from the light and the water also. And also, potassium is also used in just about every transportation of the plant, from moving food, nutrients, and chemicals, all throughout every part of the plant as well. So potassium is a very important element for the plant. And also, potassium isn't naturally present in the plant. The plant needs to get a large majority of the potassium, if not all of it, from its environment, from its substrate, and from you feeding it also, because that doesn't just naturally occur in the plant. So you want to make sure that on your NPK, that your potassium is going to be your highest number on there. And also, the potassium functions as a floating free ion that goes around from different parts of the plant that connects this chemical to that chemical, or just helps any process go. And also, when your plants are really stressed out due to a lack of water or too much water or not enough sunlight or anything like that, that may induce stress, the floating kind of free ions of the potassium really kind of help manage that stress and also keep your plant a little healthy through moments of high stress also. So high potassium is definitely important for your plant. And just so you know, there is hardly any kind of fertilizer out there that contains the right amount of potassium for your hibiscus. Like I said, you can get on Hidden Valley Hibiscus, their website, and they have a plethora of different kind of fertilizers and foods and nutrition that will help your hibiscus out, especially the ones that need the high levels of potassium. Next on that one is the phosphorus. A lot of people believe that phosphorus is the best thing for a plant out there, and for most plants that is true, but not with hibiscus. The hibiscus do not tolerate especially high levels of phosphorus for a long or extended periods of time, and if you continue to give your hibiscus a lot of phosphorus, it will stunt your plant and leave the leaves green and looking all around just kind of sick. So you'll definitely want to kind of stay away from those bloom boosters or the super blooms or anything like that. Those have a high level of phosphorus in them. And like I said, if you continue to use those, it probably will kill your plant. And if not, it will definitely leave it stunted and the leaves will turn yellow and it will look just all around sick. So you want to make sure that the phosphorus is the lowest number on your fertilizer for your hibiscus, because that will stunt the growth and all around just kind of wreck your plant. Also, the phosphorus kind of ties up other kind of micronutrients for the plants, like iron. So if you continue to feed your plant a lot of fertilizer with heavy amounts of phosphorus in it, it will kind of starve your plant out and keep them from getting the right micro and macronutrients that they need. So high levels of phosphorus are not a good idea for a hibiscus plant at all. And next would be the nitrogen. And I would say that they would need a medium amount of nitrogen with their fertilizers because all cells need nitrogen in order to live, especially all plants. They do need medium amounts of nitrogen because this just helps out almost every single process, from making leaves to flowers to roots to stems, just kind of similar to your potassium. Like I said, they use it in almost every metabolic process. They use it for proteins, they use it for enzymes, and they definitely use it for the chlorophyll also. So nitrogen is important, but it's not as important as the potassium, and it's way more important than the phosphorus. Now, if your plant isn't getting the right amount of nitrogen, too little can bring plant growth to a halt. And ideally, like I said, you kind of want to hit the middle ground. You don't want to go over too much, and you definitely don't want to be under, because it will kind of stunt the growth and kind of slow your plant down, and you really won't kind of see any mass or anything like that. And just like with too little nitrogen, too much can burn your plant out and kind of leave your leaves looking kind of brown or crispy, or just look like they've been kind of burnt out from too much fertilizer. So there is a happy medium with nitrogen, but where I and different fertilizers agree would be somewhere around a 17, 5, and 24 for the NPK. That gives you a kind of a medium amount of nitrogen, a very low amount of phosphorus, and a very high amount of potassium. Now, if you do, it's kind of hard to tell with your nitrogen if you've given it too much or too little. You just have to really know your plant, because if it stays around the same side, you're probably giving your plant not enough nitrogen, but if you start to notice the leaves look like they're starting to burn or they're browning, that typically indicates that you are giving it too much nitrogen, and the leaves will kind of burn out and it will look kind of sickly. Now, if you do notice that for your plants, the best thing to do is to stop feeding it right away and give your plant a good amount of water to kind of flush out the fertilizer salts that kind of end up in the substrate, so that it can all kind of leach out. And then after about 2 to 3 weeks, maybe even a month of kind of saturating the soil and letting it drain out, you can probably start again with the feedings, but make sure that your nitrogen isn't that high. So if your nitrogen levels are up really high, you'll want to kind of half that and start from a smaller amount. That way your plant will kind of grow and get what it needs, and just kind of hang back and observe it. Now, don't forget, when it comes to nutrients or any kind of fertilizer, you get what you pay for. If you have a really kind of cheap fertilizer, oftentimes that'll wash out and probably won't even be absorbed by your plant. So if you do get one, make sure that you get a reputable one that you know is great for hibiscus. Because like I said, a lot of these are really cheap and they're really kind of saturated with a lot of water. So your plants probably won't even absorb a huge percentage of it. Instead, a lot of it will just kind of flow out through the bottom and run off into the yard and feed it something else, if anything else would even be able to feed from that. Now, as I said, I do talk a little bit more about hibiscus care in my other video, but these just kind of hit the shelves here in Kentucky, and I wanted to take some time and let you guys know about these. As I said, they don't get too big, but they are done by graft breeding, and they have been selected based on their flowers, one, as to how long the flowers last, and two, how many flowers will actually be on any given plant. So these guys knew what they were doing, and they knew what kind of qualities to look for in each plant, and they bred according to each quality that most growers wanted to see, which was a lot of flowers and flowers that lasted a little bit longer and were probably a little bit more show-stopping than any other hibiscus plant out there. Alright guys, well that's really all I wanted to say about this plant. Like I said, they're great for edging, they're great for borders and walkways, or they're just great for any kind of person that has a small little area that they can set a plant outside. These plants do great in containers as well. If you do have any kind of questions or concern, leave them in the comments and let me know, along with what's your favorite hibiscus plant. I love the yellow ones, and the orange ones are beautiful too. Can you just see that contrast between the green and the orange? Beautiful. And don't forget, hit the subscribe button or the bell next to it. That way you'll know anytime I've uploaded a new video. You guys take it easy. Have a good one, and don't forget, always plant prudently. Thank you, YouTube. Real quick, I just wanted to thank my Patreon supporters. Gabriel donated again this month. If you're interested in donating to my Patreon, feel free to check the link out in the description box below.